Morning, church. Welcome to the Miller's Morning Miracles in the Mayhem devotional. We're going to be reading out of Matthew 14, verses 22 through 33, talking about Peter walking on the water. I'll give you a second to turn there. I guess you can pause it. Yeah, we'll get. Okay, I'll read the scripture. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, Jesus is Jesus, and I think that's why he's able to walk on the water, but I think it's important to note that before he walks knowingly into a storm that's taking place over water, he's taken time to pray to God alone, and I think that is important to see because I think that fuels his peace as he goes out into the storm and faces it. And then Peter sees Jesus, and rather than seeing the storm, he chose to see an opportunity to participate in a miracle with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, out of all the other disciples in the boat, believed that if who he saw was in fact Jesus, that he could perform a miracle. And so he began his interaction with Jesus having great faith. Once Peter's gaze became fixed on the wind and the waves, his fear became more overwhelming than the faith that he originally had. So I think this is applicable to us now because everything feels chaotic with the coronavirus. We have experienced this kind of fickle faith since the coronavirus got started, and one moment we're enjoying this time, as much as we can, and are thankful for life slowing down a little bit, and then the next moment the news outlets are reporting statistics and headlines that seem way too much to process.
Yeah, and I think it's important to ask, are we like Peter, who wants to see what it would be like to be with Jesus in a time like this? Or are we too afraid to even take that opportunity to experience a miracle happening? And Jesus' question to Peter might be rhetorical, because we don't actually hear the answer from Peter, which could be kind of interesting, why he doubted. But we can ask it of ourselves, right? What makes us doubt? And it's not that those things aren't a problem. It's not oh man, this thing makes me doubt, I should feel terrible about it. It's more what miracles that are happening right beneath our feet should we focus on instead? It's about what we choose to focus on when there's chaos and a storm about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we had. I hope that encourages you, gives you something to think about. And thanks for your time, and have a good Easter weekend.
Bye, guys.
See ya.